Although the interior castle was written primarily for Discalced Carmelite sisters, it is also meant for you. Through her own experience, Theresa aims to show you something that is common and generally accessible. Let's now examine this extraordinary book of hers. The saint wrote her life's work in 1577 in Toledo and Avila, only 5 years before her death. She was 62 then, with nearly her whole life behind her. Like her other works, this was written under obedience, which made it a costly endeavour for her. Moreover, the saint had to grapple again with the challenge of expressing the ineffable world and her experience of God with her limited vocabulary, and without proper theological training, as she notes in the preface.
Rarely has obedience laid upon me so difficult a task as this of writing about prayer.
This arduous and overwhelming task was entrusted to her by Father Jerome Gratian as a synthesis of a person's full spiritual growth. She could not excuse herself from writing because she was facing the provincial to whom she had made a personal vow of obedience 2 years earlier. On June 2nd, 1577, she began her work, and her best treatise on prayer was completed in a short time, by November the 28th of the same year. She wrote irregularly in her spare time, but quickly and fluently. Sometimes she repeated herself or strayed from her topic. She did not have time to verify her thoughts theologically. Undoubtedly, her writing was inspired. With her simple style, tinted with feelings, experiences and everyday matters, she wanted to bring the reader closer to herself. Upon finishing her task, she stated with satisfaction,
"Although, as I told you, I felt reluctant to begin this work, yet now it is finished, I am very glad to have written it, and I think my trouble has been well spent, though I confess it has cost me but little."
Currently, the original of the interior castle is housed in the convent of the Discalced Carmelites in Seville, placed in a crystal reliquary shaped like a castle, reminiscent of the walls and towers of Avila.
What is the symbolic meaning of the interior castle?
The idea of a castle as a defensive fortress came to Theresa during prayer, when she realised that describing her experience would impose limits of words on God. Theresa felt she could not translate the reality of God into the language of ordinary conversation. That is why she chose the figurative language of imagery and metaphor. She wanted to speak about who God is and what He does in the soul. She compares a person's life to a castle, a fortress full of life, which she calls interior because of the person's vocation to build a spiritual life and to enter into the innermost depths of one's being. You are the interior castle. You, the person in whom God lives. You are created by Him and for Him, and you have His life within you. Your human dignity stems from the greatness of the Creator Himself. Moreover, this castle is continually illuminated by the light of God, by God Himself. This light is unchanging, but how it is perceived by a person may change depending on the state of the soul. Theresa writes,
"There was one thing of which at first I was ignorant. I did not know that God was in all things, and, when He seemed to me to be so very present, I thought it impossible. I could not cease believing that He was there, for it seemed almost certain that I had been conscious of His very presence."
Through the symbol of the castle, Theresa shows you the happy fate of the person who is called to sainthood, to union and friendship with one's Creator, which is realised in the innermost self. Theresa describes this calling with great enthusiasm. A person's journey through the castle is an ever deeper and more conscious experience of God's presence. This journey consists of 7 mansions, 7 stages to overcome, 7 moments of cooperation between the person and God. It represents 7 degrees of self-discovery, understanding the world, and knowing God.
What is then the symbolism of these mansions or chambers?
Theresa speaks of 7 mansions, but in the Spanish original, when describing each, she always uses the plural. We should say the first mansions, the second mansions, the third. She explains this in the epilogue.
Although I have only mentioned 7 mansions, yet each one contains many more rooms above, below and around it, with fair gardens, fountains and labyrinths, besides other things so beautiful, you will wish to consume yourself in praising, in return, the great God who has created the soul to his own image and likeness.
In this way, Theresa emphasises the richness of the human interior and the impossibility of its accurate description. Each mansion represents a mode of our being, a shape of our everyday life, so there are 7 modes of living one's life. However, none of them are meant to be inhabited permanently. They are transitional dwellings meant to be passed through. All of them, however, lead to the core of your life. Your life, then, is a slow entering into your own being. God does not demand perfection from you right from the start, for a person cannot live beyond the limits of one's capabilities. You gain perfection day by day as you move from one mansion to another. Remember also that the graded nature of the mansions does not imply the impossibility of moving freely between them. Quite the opposite, it may happen quite often. The experiences characteristic of individual mansions may be mixed with each other. Only the 7th mansion will be the place of rest, the Father's house. Isn't it then risky for Theresa to introduce such gradation, potentially leading to hasty judgments about one's spiritual state? Well, yes, but that was her deliberate strategy. Theresa knew that people are ambitious and take great pride in their accomplishments. She presents particular stages to achieve, knowing that the egoistic desire to be better than others will diminish as a person gets closer to the centre. This is how the saint motivates you to overcome your laziness. She inspires and pushes you to constantly move forward, always aware of something more. It's also worth adding, which will be developed in the subsequent discussion of individual mansions, that each mansion can be appropriately titled. It has its symbol, its characteristic, the figure of Christ, the state of man, a specific kind of grace, a specific way of praying, a task, and a biblical figure. You can find this scheme in the description of each episode and on Father Mariusz's webpage, The Mystical in the Everyday.
What is the message of the interior castle?
This work by Theresa is her spiritual testament left for the use of the Church. She was aware of the great treasures hidden inside of each person, and through this book she desires to help people discover these treasures, the truth about themselves. In writing The Interior Castle, she emphasises above all the beauty of the person, inhabited by God, and encourages each of us to embark on the path to discovering this mystery. Theresa stresses that even sin does not completely drive God out of one's soul. She writes,
But the soul, by sinning, withdraws from this stream of life, and growing beside a black and fetid pool can produce nothing but disgusting and unwholesome fruit. Notice that it is not the fountain and the brilliant sun which lose their splendour and beauty, for they are placed in the very centre of the soul and cannot be deprived of this lustre. Their soul is like a crystal in the sunshine, over which a thick black cloth has been thrown, so that however brightly the sun may shine, the crystal can never reflect it.
Such an approach gives us much hope because we are a space of beauty. God continually illuminates our souls. In fact, all of your spiritual development throughout the 7 mansions consists in allowing God's light to envelope the whole of your being. The saint goes into raptures about what awaits you when you enter the 7th mansion. It is her great call to you and her assurance that God desires to bring you to the 7th mansion. Theresa herself wants to convince you.
Look, I, in my misery, have already got there. You can come as well.
The way through the 7 mansions is your way home, a journey from creation to the Creator, from the Son to the Father. That is why Theresa urges you.
Enter the castle. Enter into yourself.
By knowing yourself, you will know God and will understand your infinite dignity. For Theresa, the journey through the castle means discovering the true and original created reality of oneself. In this way, you will find out that all the spiritual wealth has always existed within you, and the journey allowed you to rediscover it. This is your awakening. After writing The Interior Castle, Theresa was conscious of the value of this work, a jewel adorned with emeralds and precious stones, whose gold is first class. Nothing but Him, God, is spoken of in this work. It is her most beloved, most desired, and most systemic work. There she could see the simplicity of God's work accomplished in her. She understood who God is to her, who she is to God. Nothing more is needed to live a beautiful life. In this way, Theresa's life was greatly simplified, and she became the mistress of her castle.